Get your hands on stylish t-shirts, hoodies, and more at wearbuff.com. That's wearbuff.com. And make sure to use the promo code TWB at checkout for 20% off your first order. Stay Buffalo proud with Wear Buff. The Buffalo Bills moved to 11-3 on the season with a decisive victory over the Detroit Lions this week on the Wandering Buffalo podcast.
You're now listening to the Wandering Buffalo podcast with your host, Justin Goddard.
Bills Mafia, welcome into another episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast, a show on the Buffalo Fanbase Podcast Network. My name is Justin. I'm your host today, and hey, another feather in the cap for the Buffalo Bills, taking down the Detroit Lions in a game that ends up being a 6-point game and being a little more stressful than we probably would have liked towards the end here. But honestly, watching this game was super fun. I mean, obviously, we have teams that combined for 90 points. This is the type of game that the NFL loves seeing, really leaning into offensive production. But I don't know, as close as this game was, it really felt like the Bills were kind of dominating all the way through this game. And I know we can look at the fact that the defense gives up 42 total points and, say, how do we feel like this was dominating? But it felt so much different than the Rams game, which, followed a very similar script with a lot of scoring and, the opponent being able to seemingly score at will. In this game, the defense had some more timely stops. We had, a turnover forced by Christian Benford, and it just kind of felt like against the Rams, we knew we were in a shootout and we were just looking for the defense to get that one stop that could, put the offense over the top. And it felt very similar in this Detroit game. And the difference was the defense had a few key stops in this game. And yeah, I it's hard to not have some concerns about the defense as we're headed into the playoffs and, we have back-to-back weeks giving up 40 points. And there's a concern factor there. But I'm also looking at this as, Detroit is the number one offense in the league, and you're able to outscore them with your defense not having the greatest day. Looking at the Rams, who have been a little bit down this season, that have also been riddled with injuries. You're talking a quarterback in Stafford that's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback and just two absolutely ridiculous weapons. And, those were two really tough matchups for the defense. And I think particularly from this Detroit game, I come away feeling a little bit better than I did after the Rams game. And it's those opportunistic, bend but don't break opportunities that the defense was able to get the ball back to the offense. And doing that when you're considering, starting the game without your pair of starting safeties. You have Cole Bishop come into the game. He leaves hurt. Matt Milano leaves the game hurt. And, kind of a mixed bag on, where Milano's at this point. I don't think he's playing poorly, but he doesn't look like, freaking Matt Milano. But just kind of having a myriad of injuries on defense, I feel like it's easy to look at this game from the box score and be like, yeah, the defense didn't play well. And I think it's a defense. We ran into another buzzsaw of an offense. And I think kind of despite the score, they held their own. The biggest thing for me in this game was the pass rush and them affecting the quarterback. We saw next to nothing from the defensive line in the Rams game. And in this game, we're seeing pretty consistent pressure on Goff. Granted, Goff was looking like an escape artist, looked like a knockoff Josh Allen on a few of the plays there. But the defensive line was able to get to the quarterback a little bit, you know, change when he wanted to throw the ball, change the angle throwing the ball. And I think that was my biggest concern as we head into the playoffs is, you know, from having watched the Rams game and thinking about the brutal playoff losses that we've had, they all kind of involve having a great quarterback standing in the pocket all day, picking apart his own because we can't get after the pass rusher. And I thought we saw Von Miller looked effective in this game. Groot had, I think it was 9 quarterback pressures. Ed Oliver, 10 quarterback pressures. And, there's been a lot of talk about needing more from Ed Oliver this year. He gave you an awful lot in this game. I even saw Javon Solomon had a clear win on Penei Sewell, viewed as one of the best tackles in the league. And, here's our rookie 5th-round pick able to, he doesn't come away with the sack. This was a pretty bad whiff on his part, but he got to the quarterback, and Jared Goff did some escape artist stuff on that one. But I think we're seeing kind of a building confidence in that defensive line. And in particular, I've been pretty excited about seeing some more out of Javon Solomon. I think in the limited reps that we've seen him, I thought he's at least looks the part. And I feel like we kind of see evidence that the coaching staff is feeling the same way. And, now we've had a couple roster moves. We have people coming back from IR, and, the Bills choose to release Casey Toohill. Now, I imagine they're going to try to get him back to the practice squad. As of now, we haven't seen that move, but to me, it's signaling that they're choosing Solomon over Toohill right now, which gets me excited because I have big questions about the defensive end room kind of going beyond this season. I know as you're in the midst of, a playoff push and hopefully a Super Bowl run, it's not the ideal time to, start seeing what the future looks like. But to me, Tuhill's been fine. He plays hard, but he's not, a great player. And to me, Solomon has some of those tools that you can bet on the upside and, plan on getting a little bit more from him. So excited to see where that heads. At any rate, got to talk about our guy, Josh Allen. And I've talked about it so much on this show, but just kind of reiterate, I am not one that personally cares about the NFL awards, the MVP, the defensive player, all that stuff. It's not really for me. I think that their system for how they choose players is arbitrary and broken. I think the awards matter to the players for like their legacy and all that, and I guess that's where I'd have the most concern about something like this is when we're talking about Josh Allen being cemented in history and these awards that you can point to. But personally, I don't really care for these awards. If you're going off of moments, if you're going off of big plays, I think it's hard to think that Josh Allen didn't, just have back-to-back weeks of really cementing himself as the MVP. I know Saquon Barkley, Lamar Jackson, they're having great, amazing seasons. When you look at it and you had, you know, the Chiefs the Chiefs match up against the Bills and they had nobody else beat them in the season, the Bills take them down. Detroit, you know, widely talked about as the best team in football right now. Going into that game with one loss on the season, Bills hand him another one. That's two giant statement wins for Josh Allen's conversation. And that's not even getting into his actual play that gets us to those wins. I'm thinking about some of these passes, when he gets out of the pocket and he's rolls all the way to the sideline and just kind of stands there for a half tick and finds Ty Johnson down the field, or, does the little push Keon Coleman, just keep going deeper. I'm chucking it up, and able to make those plays. And all these plays that we're talking about, fundamental quarterback play of not throwing across your body back across the field, and how many times Josh Allen is successful doing that. I wouldn't be surprised if he still doesn't win it. These are part of the reasons I don't care about this award. But to me, I try to watch as much of the league as possible. I try to take some of my bias out of the equation. And I think the biggest thing here for me is Lamar Jackson. And this is just kind of where I get to, well, what kind of criteria do you want to go with? Because, Lamar wins it last year with lesser stats, and his team had a better record. And this year, it's like Lamar has the better stats, but the team has the worst record. So I don't know. I have no idea how this is going to go. All I can tell you is that Josh Allen is an absolute alien. He adds on another four touchdowns this week. 2 through the air, 2 on the ground, no interceptions, another game, no sacks. Just an outstanding performance. And, as we're talking about no sacks, I know Josh Allen does a lot to, mitigate pressures that do end up making it to him. But even at that, he's not even having to deal with much pressure. The offensive line has been playing absolutely outstanding football, and you see that in the pass game. You see that in the run game. The running backs and tight ends went crazy this game. It seems kind of like Detroit likes to play a lot of base 4-3, and Brady was in his bag this game of, okay, we're going to exploit, the matchups now, and we're going to have our running backs and tight ends. They're going to take your linebackers into space and see if you can carry them. And, it ends up being a great game plan. I love the way that Brady deployed all 3 running backs today. And, James Cook ends up with 2 rushing touchdowns on 14 carries, 105 yards. Allen adds 68 rushing yards himself. Like I said, the 2 touchdowns on the ground. Ty Johnson, Ray Davis weren't very involved in the actual run game. But then you have Ty Johnson, leading the team in yards with 114 on 5 catches. Didn't have that on my bingo card for the day. And then Ray Davis also, another 2 catches, 14 yards, and he adds a touchdown. So just an overall huge day for the running backs. And one of the things I love most about this game is when we heard so much about the everybody eats philosophy at the beginning of the year, and it was kind of like this great on paper. Do we have the talent to back it up? all that conversation. And this is a game where we scored 48 points on offense. And, your big trade deadline acquisition of Amari Cooper, to really legitimize this wide receiver room and give Josh Allen that real, wide receiver one. He didn't even have a target in this game. Not not only did he not have a catch, he wasn't even targeted. And that just kind of speaks volumes to me about the team mentality here, the different ways that this team can beat you. Of we think we can win with our running backs and tight ends this week. And yeah, we still saw production from Khalil Shakir. Keon Coleman has one catch for 64 yards, just, the bomb from Allen. And then, Shakir ends up 6 catches, 39 yards. He has the touchdown. But, outside of that, there's really not much from the receivers. And then we see Dalton Kincaid has 4 catches for 53 yards, and Dawson Knox 2 for 42, one of them being that really great one-handed tip to himself catch. So, as we're talking about heading into the playoffs, we've seen this team win, particularly on offense, just being able to actually have Allen, drop back to pass and be able to take what the defense is giving you. And there's no concern about who is or isn't getting targets. And, there's a lot of egos in football, and maybe this plan doesn't work out long term. Maybe people still get upset that they're not getting the ball. Maybe you do have all the right people in the building that are fully bought into the system. But what I can tell you right now is that it's working right now, and it's very exciting to have consecutive weeks of the offensive output that we've had as we work towards the stretch run here. As I mentioned on defense, it's hard to feel overly excited about the defense in this game. Just, looking at the other scoreboard, and there's 42 points. But like I said, this is also the number one offense in the league. They've been able to run all over everybody with their combination of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And in this game, they combined for 10 carries, 44 yards. And I think that, I'm sorry, 13 carries and 35 yards. And I think that kind of speaks volumes to how this, when I talk about the game feeling more dominant than it was, I think this is kind of my evidence of that. And that Detroit is a team that wants to be physical and run the ball down your throat. And there's been no other teams in the league this year that have held them under 100 yards rushing. And they didn't even get to 50 on us. And there's been there's been a ton of concern over the course of this season about the Bills' run defense being gashed for yards and all those conversations. And I think in this game they decided that they that's not how they were going to let Detroit win. If Detroit was going to beat us, it was going to be through the air, and it was going to be Jared Goff making plays. And we get out to an early lead and kind of control the game script that way. We're able to take their running game a little bit out of the equation, which they do so effectively, which in turn limits, their play action effectiveness. And yeah, they went crazy. Jared Goff threw for almost 500 yards. He threw for 5 touchdowns. But we were also able to sack him 3 times. He had to drop back to pass almost 60 times, 59 pass attempts. And, like I said, this is the number one offense in the league. They're going to get theirs. And when you look at, the injuries that we had on defense, I'm not entirely sure how much differently it would have gone. Probably a little bit better, but I mean, ultimately, second half, you're kind of moving to a little bit of a more prevent defense, making them earn their way all the way down the field. You're going to give up yards in that facet, and just kind of looking at the box score and the raw statistics of it's really tough to use that to gauge how I feel on defense. And, you know, you, you, Amon-Ra St. Brown, for example, here had 14 catches on 18 targets for 193 yards and a touchdown. Like, yeah, that's a bananas day receiving. And when you start looking at, we're playing a backup cornerback, we're playing what our fourth and fifth safeties, you're going to give up some yards. Now, I will say kind of the caveat to that is no other team in this league is going to feel bad for your injuries. So, I mean, that's the hand that we're dealt right now. And we've seen, a few seasons now get derailed by, significant injuries that kind of just run through one position. And it doesn't sound like we're dealing with anything super serious right now. But I mean, if this is the defense you got to go into the playoffs with, nobody is going to, you know, oh, their safeties are hurt. We're gonna take it easy on those guys back there. Nope, that's gonna be the area of the field that they choose to attack. So while I love seeing a good old fashioned shootout and, you know, Josh Allen being able to go Superman and will this offense to a victory 48-42, while that's super fun to watch. Not sure how well that plays in the playoffs. I'd like to, see the defense be able to keep the points on the other side down a little bit. But like I said, there were some encouraging things for me in this game from the defense. Like I said, we were able to get after Goff a little bit more, able to get a few sacks. The defense seemingly chose to stop the run this game, and they were able to do it. And that's one of the big things for me is how often we can talk about the run defense not being good. The run defense is typically not good when it appears that the defense is like the game plan for that week is to not be all that concerned about the run game and to limit the passing game. But there's been several times where the defense kind of keys in on stopping a run game and they're able to do it with success. So we'll see how it goes here. We're headed into the final stretch here. We have the Patriots coming up next week. Be mindful that game was flexed to a 4:25 start time, so adjust plans accordingly. I'm not going to say any game in the NFL is a gimme game, especially when you're talking division games are always weird and played a little bit tighter. But you're having a Patriots team come into town that, they're not really playing for much. Their season's over, maybe just kind of a pride factor, but really no business competing in this game. So hey, maybe we'll get to see a little Mitch Trubisky, one can hope, and seal up another win for the Bills. Another thing to keep an eye on here, it's kind of seemed after this week that the 1 seed is starting to get a little bit out of reach. We did see Patrick Mahomes deal with an ankle injury this week. It seems like he's going to be fine. Looks like he's going to play. But until it's all over, to me, that 1 seed is still in play. So looking for the Bills to come into this game, handle their business. I don't think they have any sort of mindset of taking their foot off the gas here. I think they're same as I just said. They're chasing. They want that 1 seed, and they're going to go for it until they're told that it can't be gotten. So if you made it this far, make sure you're following me for the rest of the journey into this in this season. It looks like it's going to have a pretty nice run into the playoffs here. Make sure you're subscribed, like, share, follow, do all the things for me. I really do appreciate it. Tell a friend about the show. Helps us keep the show going every week. Like I said, Patriots up next week, and we're getting close to the playoffs. It should be a fun end to the season here. So make sure you tune in next week as we talk about the Patriots game. And until then, go Bills.